Handheld gaming has really had kind of a spotty history over the last decade or so. Things started to kind of go in the wrong direction with the PlayStation Vita in what was that, 2012, 2013, something like that when that came out. Handheld gaming has been a very specific thing for a long time, starting with the Game Boy, obviously, in 1989, we had specific versions of games that were designed for specific hardware. The idea that, the Game Boy had specific limitations. It wasn't as powerful, it didn't have a color screen at the time, it didn't have a backlit screen. They wanted to make that handheld as cheap as possible, and in order to, take full advantage of that, they had to design games specifically for that hardware. So they might be similar in a lot of ways to their console counterparts. You would see a Mario game on the Game Boy, which would be structurally pretty similar to a Mario game on the NES or the SNES, let's say. You would have the same mechanics of being able to jump and hit blocks and, jump on enemies and that sort of thing. But the experience was shorter, more compact, shorter levels, shorter overall runtime, because in general, when people are on the go, they don't have as much time to sit on the couch and devote 2, 3, 4 hours. When most people are gaming, they're, on a handheld, whether you're on the bus or you're just waiting in the car for your mom to finish grocery shopping or whatever, you've got half an hour here and there, unless you're on a long car ride or something. But typically, handheld gaming has been at its best when the games designed for those consoles were designed for the handheld experience. Shorter, more digestible stuff. Puzzle games, for example, or easier to digest stuff. That's why Tetris was so huge on the Game Boy, because it's a game that you can jump into and play for 2 or 3 minutes and quit, or play for 20 minutes and quit, or play for 2 or 3 hours. It's just infinitely replayable, but very, very digestible. And I think that is the key thing to remember as we talk about handheld gaming and where it went wrong. So we have now, today, and we have had for 8 years at this point, the Nintendo Switch. And the Nintendo Switch is a fantastic device. The idea of a hybrid console that can be a console hooked up to your TV, or it can be handheld, that's fantastic, and they weren't the first people to do that. As far back as the Sony PSP, developers were trying to make console experiences on the go, and for a while that was really, really novel. But when you compare the performance of the PSP to something like the DS, where most of the games on the DS were much more designed in that way to be digestible, easily digestible. Games like your Nintendogs, for example, or Brain Age or something, where you could pop in and pop out for 20 minutes a day and just get your little fix there. Animal Crossing, for example, fantastic game for a handheld device. You go in, you shake a few trees, you talk to a couple of villagers, and you call it a day. Handheld gaming has really been pushing to take over, not really take over, but emulate the console space. With the PSP, we had all kinds of games on it, like your God of Wars, for example, where they tried to give the best equivalent they could to that console experience. The Ratchet and Clanks and the Daxters and things of that nature. And I think that's one of the reasons why the PSP was less successful in the long run, because people would pick up a PSP, they would pick up one of these games and go, this is really cool, this is really impressive that this little handheld can do this, but at the end of the day, it's not really what I want to be playing on the go. We move forward to the 3DS era, and competing with the PS Vita in that same time frame, The 3DS did way better than the Vita, I think, because the Vita was pushing even harder at that point into those console-like experiences. Your Call of Duties, your Killzones, and, things of that nature, Uncharted, and most of those games just felt like unnecessary side games that simply existed so that you could have that Uncharted experience on the go, right? And I don't really feel like, at the end of the day, that's what most people really want. And, the Switch did it really, really well, being that hybrid. If the Vita had been able to hook up to the TV, and I know we did have the PS Vita TV, the little console, and that solved some of the problems, but the Switch got it absolutely right, being able to switch back and forth, right? You can have some of these smaller experiences on the go, or you can play that Breath of the Wild moment in a handheld space, and that's fantastic. But after 7 or 8 years of seeing Nintendo pump out, game after game after game that are bigger, broader experiences, things like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, for example, which is an absolutely fantastic Kirby game, but not as good of a handheld game as something like Kirby Planet Robobot, that has a shorter, level structure and things like that. Kirby Planet Robobot is a much better handheld experience on the 3DS, for example, and the point of this video right now is to talk about how important the 3DS is. Looking back, this thing is a lot better than most people gave it credit for. Back in the day, the 3DS did not sell anywhere near as well as the DS, and it did tend to have larger, more expansive experiences on it than a lot of the games on the DS. And during this time, you have to remember, during those early 2010s, 2012, 2013, people were starting to move increasingly more and more and more into mobile gaming spaces. And a lot of those casual experiences, things like Endless Runners and puzzle games like Cut the Rope and Fruit Ninja and things like that on your phones, Angry Birds, that was where people were getting those fixes in terms of the casual games, the digestible stuff, right? And so, in these companies like Sony with the Vita, and like Nintendo with the 3DS, were trying to find their own niche to compete with how many people were going to these mobile games. And I think they did the best thing that they could, and they were kind of a victim of what was going on in the world at the time. By the time the Switch launched in 2017, people were ready to move back away from mobile games to having a dedicated device again that they could carry around with them. And people were really, really impressed with things like those Breath of the Wild moments, where you could be on the bus or on your porch swing in the backyard playing something like Breath of the Wild on a portable device, and it was really, really impressive. But now, after having had that, and having devices like the Steam Deck, for example, which take that even to the next level, the idea that you can play virtually anything. I can play Cyberpunk 2077 or Elden Ring on the go anywhere I want, but is it really all that portable? My Steam Deck almost never leaves my house because it's just too big. Like, it's too clunky and too big to really, you can't put it in a pocket. It weighs like 3 or 4 pounds, right? So even putting it in a backpack, by the time you put it in a case to protect it and everything, it's not that portable. You look at something like the 3DS or the 2DS XL. I've got here a regular launch model 3DS as well. This one's got a capture card attachment here. It's my son's. But, looking at something like this, you can fold this closed and stick it in any pocket. In your breast pocket, in your pants pocket, in your jacket pocket, whatever. It's small enough to go wherever with you. I personally prefer the slightly larger size of the 2DS XL and the 3DS XL. And the thing with the 3DS is, being that it plays all of the DS library and all of the 3DS library, it's such a fantastic system to go back to at this point, because it still has so many of those, you know, those experiences that you want in a handheld form factor. Nintendo has not done a whole lot in the way of those handheld experiences. It used to be, you know, when we had the Wii U and the 3DS, we would get the console experience, you know, Smash Brothers on the Wii U, and then we got Smash Bros. For 3DS. And they were different experiences that were, you know, tailored to those devices. Now that everything is combined into one device, we're getting less choice. And, you know, maybe Smash Brothers wasn't the best example because they tried pretty hard to create parity between the devices. But there are so many, you know, you look at something like Nintendo just releasing the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake on the Switch. Now that is a handheld game. That is a perfect handheld game. And, you know, some of the best experiences on handhelds are things like that. Short, digestible games like a Mario vs. Donkey Kong puzzle game. You know, it's a single-screen game, level-based. You do one, it auto-saves, so you don't have to worry about losing your progress or anything like that. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling here, but I wanted to get to the point that in 2024, the 3DS is becoming far more important than it ever was. You know, in 2018, 2019, everybody was thinking that the 3DS was just garbage compared to the Switch. But now, looking back, I am spending more and more and more time with my 3DS, taking it with me everywhere again, because it solves that problem. It scratches that itch that I think we have lost for that handheld experience. That ability to, you know, pop off to the side of the road when you're waiting to pick somebody up and play 3 minutes of Animal Crossing, right? And be able to feel like you've got some progress in a game. Whereas when you're launching up something like Uncharted on the PSP, if you play that for 3 minutes, you've got nowhere. Maybe you didn't get to the next save point or whatever. You gotta worry about whether the battery's gonna die on your device and lose your save or something. Like, there is definitely a place in the market that is, you know, there's a hole in the market right now because we don't have really a handheld device that, I mean, we've got stuff like the Playdate, I guess, you know, that has those bite-sized type experiences, but that's not really a large market sort of thing. It's not all that popular. I guess, you know, if you want to go retro, you could get something like an Analog Pocket and, you know, or one of those RG35XX emulation machines or something like that from Anbernic. But at the end of the day, if you want an official way to play new games that are designed for handheld experience, it really doesn't exist. And the 3DS is becoming more and more and more important to me as the time goes by, and I'm discovering just, you know, games that I missed back in the day that scratch that itch for the more casual, or not even casual. You can, you know, play an RPG, something like a Fantasy Life, for example, and all you gotta do is close the lid, and you can pick it up later. You know, the Switch does have Suspend, but it's just not the same level of convenience with the Switch. You gotta put it in a case and zip it up and put it in your backpack. It's just not the same. I don't know. Let me know out there in the comments if you feel the same way, that there is a hole in the industry that really needs to be filled with some kind of dedicated handheld device, because I feel like these 3DSs, like, I'm having problems with battery life, and missing styluses and stuff, and these things are so expensive now. Like, here in Canada, a decent new 3DS is like $400 plus. If you want something in a box, it's like, you know, for a new 3DS XL, it's like $600. I know you can still get them a little bit cheaper from Japan, the 2DS XL or 2DS LLs or whatever, but you know, there needs to be some kind of new alternative that is still putting out new games that you can buy. I've thought about those Evercade Pocket Mini things, but even that, I don't know if that is really going to scratch the itch. Let me know down in the comments, what is your solution to having some kind of handheld gaming on the go that feels new and fresh? Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Stay classy.